Last February, I lost my husband to a sudden heart attack. I thought that grief would be the hardest thing I'd ever face. But by May, while I was still learning how to breathe again, my neighbors decided to turn my pain into their TikTok content. They filmed lies about me, about my kids, about our home, and strangers believed them. It wasn't gossip. It was harassment that landed me in the ICU. My children were too scared to step outside. And still their camera never stopped. How do you fight back when your abuser hides behind a screen? When people talk about grief, they usually picture tears, flowers, and hushed condolences. They don't picture TikToks. They don't picture your face plastered online with captions calling you a bad mother, or strangers in your inbox asking if your kids are safe. But that became my reality. In February, I lost my husband to a sudden heart attack. One moment he was here, sitting at the dinner table, the next moment I was standing in a hospital room staring at a monitor that had gone flat. Overnight, I became a single mom, holding my children while they cried themselves to sleep. My world had already collapsed. I thought nothing else could break me further. First, most of my neighbors were kind. They brought casseroles, left cards at my door, even offered to babysit. It reminded me that community still existed, even in small apartment complexes like ours. I wanted to believe that, despite everything, my kids and I would be okay. But then there was them. The couple at the end of the hall. Influencers, at least that's what they called themselves. Every day they filmed outside, posting videos where they made snide remarks about the property, about the neighbors, about anyone unlucky enough to walk into their frame. I had ignored it before. I told myself it was harmless, just internet noise. Until one day I clicked on a video and saw my name. The woman was holding her phone up, speaking directly to her followers. This mom never cleans her apartment. I'm worried about those kids. The man added, I bet CPS would have a field day with this. My heart dropped. They weren't just gossiping. They were accusing. And it didn't stop there. They posted video after video repeating the same lies. That I was neglecting my kids, that my apartment was filthy, that animals had been removed from my home. They encouraged their followers to report me. And someone did. When Child Protective Services showed up at my door, clipboard in hand, I thought I was going to pass out. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely sign the paperwork. The inspection was quick and the case was closed immediately because of course it was. My kids were fine. My home was fine. But the damage had already been done. That night I sat on the floor of my kitchen staring at the tiles, my chest tight, my head pounding. It wasn't just the lies that terrified me. It was how easy it was for strangers on the internet to believe them. For a moment I wondered if maybe everyone around me saw me the way those videos described. Fragile, messy, incapable. I told myself it would blow over. That they'd get bored and move on. But deep down I knew better. And I was right. Because everything was about to change. Life in that apartment complex became a kind of prison. Not because of the walls but because of the eyes, their cameras always waiting. At first I tried to brush it off. I kept my head down when I went to the mailbox. I told my kids not to wave when they saw the neighbors outside. But the more I avoided them, the harder they pushed. It was like they fed off my silence. One afternoon, I stepped outside to grab a package. I heard laughter, not the warm kind, the kind that prickles your skin. I looked up and saw the husband pointing his phone directly at me, narrating to whoever was watching. There she is. The one who never cleans. Look at the trash by her door. The trash was a bag of clothes I was donating to charity. But to his followers it was proof. That night I scrolled through TikTok. My stomach dropped when I saw my own face staring back at me. Zoomed in shots of me carrying laundry. Clips of my children walking to school. His wife's voiceover. I feel so sorry for those kids. They don't even have clean clothes. It didn't matter that I had the receipts. The app that showed I used the laundry room every week, the inspections from management proving my apartment was fine. What mattered was the narrative they were spinning. And the internet loves a villain. The comments piled up. Strangers telling me to do better. Others suggesting my kids should be taken away. Some even tracked down my profile and sent me private messages. Threats disguised as concern. I could feel my chest tightening each time I opened my phone. My head pounded with every notification. My kids started asking why we couldn't go play outside like we used to. I didn't know how to tell them the truth. That their faces had become content for people who wanted us destroyed. One morning as I tried to sip my coffee, my vision blurred. My hands went numb. The mug slipped from my fingers, shattering against the counter. My daughter's scream echoed through the kitchen as I collapsed. By the time I opened my eyes again, I was in a hospital bed, wires attached to my chest, the steady beep of a monitor reminding me I was still alive. The doctor's words were sharp, unforgiving. It was a small stroke caused by stress. You need to rest. Or next time it could be worse. I thought the nightmare had reached its peak. But I was wrong. The hospital discharged me after a few days. Physically, I was stable. Mentally, I was shattered. My kids clung to me like shadows, terrified I'd collapse again. I promised them I'd be careful. What I didn't say was that I had no idea how to protect us. When we got home, the complex felt different, smaller somehow, as if every wall leaned in to listen. The silence wasn't comforting. It was suffocating. Neighbors peeked through blinds, afraid to linger outside. I thought maybe, just maybe, the influencers had moved on while I was gone. Then I checked my phone. There it was. A TikTok clip of me being wheeled into an ambulance. The wife's voice narrated over it. See what stress does when you don't take care of yourself or your kids. I told you something was wrong in that apartment. My stomach turned. They weren't horrified. They were entertained. I marched to the property manager's office, desperate for help. She sighed before I even finished explaining. I know, she said. They film me too. Every time I confront them, they twist the footage to make me look like I'm harassing them. Then they post it. So that's it? I asked. They can just keep doing this? She lowered her voice. They've sued almost everyone who's tried to stop them. The county attorney calls it free speech. I walked out with my heart racing, rage mixing with fear. Surely the police would help, right? No. When I called, the officer on duty chuckled like he was tired of hearing the same story. Look, he said. They've helped us before with drug cases. They're useful. Unless they're threatening you directly, there's nothing we can do. Useful. That word rang in my ears. My life, my health, my children's safety. None of it mattered because my abusers were useful. That night, I sat on the couch staring at the blank TV screen, replaying the ambulance clip in my head. The comments were brutal. People mocking my appearance, questioning my fitness as a mother. My hands shook as I scrolled. My daughter crawled into my lap and whispered, Mom, are we bad kids? I felt something inside me snap. This wasn't just harassment. It was a campaign. A spectacle. And the worst part? Everyone in authority already knew. Which meant I wasn't just fighting toxic neighbors. I was fighting ghosts with badges. I thought I understood what they were doing to me, a few cruel videos, maybe some mocking posts. But late one night, after putting the kids to bed, I opened my laptop and typed their names into the search bar. I wasn't ready for what I found. Video after video. Dozens of them. My face in the thumbnail, my children blurred only halfway. Our apartment door tagged with captions like, Neglect lives here. They weren't just accusing me of being messy or tired. They were building a story. An alternate reality where I was a monster mother hiding behind closed doors. And it wasn't just me. Another neighbor, a quiet man on the first floor, had been painted as a drug dealer with a vicious dog. I knew him. He didn't even own a dog. He barely spoke to anyone. Yet there he was, turned into an online villain. Another woman down the hall was accused of hoarding animals. She didn't have a single pet. They were weaving an entire web of lies, dragging all of us into it. And people were eating it up. Thousands of views, streams of comments, strangers demanding CPS, animal control, code enforcement. Agencies that now ignored them because they cried wolf too many times. But online, none of that mattered. Online perception was reality. I scrolled until my vision blurred. My hands trembled as I clicked on a video labeled, These kids are bullies. It was my children. Walking home from school, laughing together, backpacks bouncing on their shoulders. The influencer wife's voice was syrupy sweet. These poor kids act out because of neglect. It's so sad. I slammed my laptop shut, bile rising in my throat. My kids were 11 and 9. Innocent. And now the internet believed they were cruel. I pressed my palms against my eyes, but the images stayed burned into me. My children turned into characters for clicks. The weight of it crushed me. This wasn't gossip whispered at a fence. This was permanent, searchable, shareable. Anyone could see it. Teachers, parents, even my kids if they ever went online without me watching. I realized then, this wasn't just harassment. This was entrapment. A digital prison built out of lies, locking us inside while the world pointed and judged. And the worst part? The guards of that prison, the cops, the attorney, even the platforms, had all turned their backs. I used to think I was alone in this nightmare. But as the weeks dragged on, I realized my neighbors were prisoners too. First, I noticed it in small ways. The man on the first floor stopped taking his evening walks. The woman with 2 kids quit sitting on her porch after dinner. Even the teenagers who used to skateboard in the lot vanished. The courtyard was empty, the playground silent. We weren't living in an apartment complex anymore. We were living on a stage, and none of us wanted to be part of the show. One morning at the bus stop, a few of us parents gathered in a tight circle. Nobody laughed. Nobody even made eye contact for long. It was like standing in a foxhole during a war, waiting for the next strike. They filmed my son yesterday, one mother whispered, her voice shaking. Just walking to the car. Called him a troublemaker. He's 7. They said I run a dogfighting ring, the man beside her muttered. I don't even own a dog. We all looked at each other, pale and exhausted, and I knew the truth. It wasn't just me. These people weren't neighbors. They were predators circling the entire building, waiting to pounce on whoever dared to live normally. But knowing that didn't make me feel better. It made me feel trapped. I thought about moving, but the numbers didn't add up. Rent elsewhere was higher, my savings were thin, and after the hospital bills, I barely had enough to cover groceries. Besides, why should I be the one forced to leave? I had lived here longer. My kids went to school here. That night, lying awake while my children snored softly in the next room, I stared at the ceiling and weighed my choices. Run and let them win. Stay and let them keep filming. Neither option felt like survival. But deep down I knew something had to give. I couldn't keep hiding behind curtains while my life was torn apart online. I couldn't keep answering my kids' questions with half-truths about why their friends weren't allowed to play outside anymore. Something inside me whispered, silence is exactly what they want. And I realized running wasn't an option. But neither was staying quiet. Desperation pushed me to try one more path, the legal route. I filed for a restraining order, clutching a folder full of screenshots and printouts like it was armor. I told myself the judge would see the truth. The videos, the lies, the ambulance footage. Surely no one could look at this mess and call it free speech. But that's exactly what happened. The county attorney skimmed my papers, sighed, and shook his head. I know this couple, he said flatly. They sue everyone. Courts won't touch this unless there's direct violence. My advice? Ignore them. Eventually they'll get bored. I walked out of his office feeling smaller than ever. My evidence wasn't evidence. My fear wasn't enough. My children's safety wasn't a priority. Still, I tried to believe him. Maybe if I stopped reacting, they'd lose interest. For a few weeks, it almost seemed to work. Their uploads slowed down. I stopped checking TikTok every night. My heart didn't pound when I walked to the mailbox. For the first time in months, I let my kids ride their bikes in the parking lot. They laughed, and the sound filled me with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. I dared to imagine that maybe, just maybe, the nightmare was ending. Then I opened my phone one morning and froze. A new video. My daughter's face filmed at the bus stop. Caption. Neglect shows in the eyes of a child. The comments were worse than ever. Strangers analyzing her body language like amateur detectives. She looks sad. She probably doesn't eat enough. Call CPS again. My daughter, 11 years old, turned into content for clicks. I sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, my chest burning. My son walked in chewing on toast and asked, Mom, why are people saying bad things about us? I couldn't breathe. The fragile bubble of peace had popped, and the shards cut deep. That night I lay awake, replaying every word from the county attorney. Ignore them, he said. Wait it out, he said. But ignoring them hadn't saved me. And it certainly hadn't saved my children. The silence I'd clung to wasn't protection. It was surrender. And I realized with a cold certainty that the real fight was only beginning. The breaking point came on a muggy August morning. A group of us parents were standing at the bus stop, trying to act normal while our kids waited. We spoke in low tones, careful not to draw attention. But of course she came anyway, phone in hand, red light blinking. The influencer wife marched right into the circle, camera aimed square at my face. "There she is," she said loudly, as if narrating for her followers. "The mother who neglects her kids. Look at this," gathering with her little gang to gossip. Something inside me snapped. For months I had swallowed it down. The fear, the shame, the anger. I'd collapsed under the weight of it, bled for it in a hospital bed. But seeing her there, smirking while my daughter clutched my hand, was the last straw. I stepped forward, voice shaking but loud enough to cut through the morning air. "Do you ever get tired?" I asked. "Tired of inventing lies? Tired of filming children who aren't yours?" Her phone wavered slightly. She hadn't expected me to speak. "You think you're exposing us?" I continued, my words tumbling out like fire. "No one believes you. You're the joke of this town. You hide behind your camera because without it, you're nothing." Other parents chimed in, voices rising one after another. "You filmed my son walking to the car. You called me a drug dealer. You made up stories about my home." The influencer wife's face twisted, torn between fury and the realization that she was outnumbered. Her hand shook as she pulled her phone closer. "See," she stammered, turning the lens on herself. "They're bullying me. All of them. I'm the victim here." But her retreat wasn't victorious. It was frantic. She fled back toward her apartment, her voice shrill, promising her followers that she'd document every second of this harassment. The moment she disappeared inside, a heavy silence fell over the group. My chest was heaving, adrenaline surging, but for the first time in nearly a year, I felt something I thought I'd lost forever: power. I looked down at my kids, their eyes wide but proud. My daughter squeezed my hand. "You told her, Mom," she whispered. For the first time I believed it. I had. And the ground beneath them had finally started to shake. 2 weeks after the showdown at the bus stop, the final act began. It started in the leasing office. Word spread quickly through the building that the influencer husband had stormed in, phone in hand, recording every second. He accused the property manager of targeting them, of conspiring with the bullies in the complex. His wife chimed in, screeching from behind the camera, demanding justice for all the supposed harassment. But this time they'd gone too far. Management had tolerated their games for months, the fake reports, the endless videos, the paranoia they spread like poison. But when they began screaming in the office, disrupting business, and filming private conversations with staff, the property manager finally snapped. An eviction notice was taped to their door the very next day. The hall was quiet as neighbors gathered in clusters, whispering in disbelief. We had all fantasized about this moment, but none of us dared to believe it would actually come. The couple, of course, turned it into content. Videos poured out daily. Shaky phone footage of them crying on camera, claiming to be victims of a smear campaign. They accused everyone, me, the other parents, even the property manager, of orchestrating their downfall. Their followers lapped it up, sending comments of pity, calling us monsters. But behind the walls of the complex, the mood shifted. People who hadn't spoken in months suddenly lingered outside, cautiously hopeful. Kids started kicking soccer balls in the courtyard again. For the first time in nearly a year, there was a glimmer of normal life. Of course it wasn't over. On move-out day, the wife paraded through the parking lot with her phone, sobbing dramatically into the camera about how we had ruined her life. She filmed the children waiting for the bus, accusing us one last time of being bullies. The husband dragged boxes to their car, muttering threats about lawsuits and promising they'd be back stronger. I stood at my window watching, my hands pressed against the glass. My chest tightened with a mixture of relief and dread. Relief because the nightmare was finally leaving. Dread because I knew people like them never exit quietly. As their car pulled away, neighbors stepped outside, cautiously at first, then bolder. For the first time in months, we looked at one another without fear. The air felt lighter, the silence less suffocating. But I also knew this wasn't the end of their story. Not really. They'd keep posting, keep spinning lies, keep trying to claw back relevance. Still, for us, for me and my kids, it was over. They were gone. Leased from here. The day after they drove away, I sat on the balcony for the first time in months. The air felt different. Not safer exactly, but quieter. My kids rode their bikes in circles around the parking lot, laughing so loudly I almost cried just hearing it. For the first time in nearly a year, I didn't feel like every movement was being documented for strangers to dissect. I didn't feel like a villain in someone else's narrative. I just felt like a mom watching her kids be kids. But the scars remain. I still flinch when I hear the click of a camera phone. I still check the curtains twice before stepping outside. And I still wonder how many strangers out there believe the lies they told. How many screenshots will live forever in some forgotten corner of the internet. The hardest part wasn't just surviving the harassment. It was realizing how powerless the system left me. The police, the courts, even the platforms, they all shrugged. My health was destroyed, my children were humiliated, my community was paralyzed. And none of it mattered because the people causing it knew how to hide behind a red recording light. If there's one lesson I've learned, it's this. Karma doesn't come fast, but it does come. Sometimes the people who thrive on lies end up choking on them. And sometimes survival is the only victory you get. But tell me this. If your neighbors turned your life into their content, what would you do?